Let me take a sip of wine. Yes. What should you call me? Well, my name is Elisabeth Ovesen, and for some people that might be brand new information. Karrine Steffans is my pen name. I answer to either one of those two. It feels surreal to me, number one, to be 20 years older. Number two, to see the state of the world 20 years later, socially, I mean, between men and women, and I think the public's awareness. Confessions works now, I think, in a way that it didn't work 20 years ago. So yeah, it feels, gosh, thinking back, it feels like a whole new world. When Confessions came out, it was a different time. So I don't think anyone was ready for what Confessions did and what it would go on to do even 20 years later. I thought that everyone knew that women were allowed to live their lives as freely as men. I thought everyone understood that women had the right to speak up and to tell their stories and to tell their truths. I thought that everything I was saying and doing, not that I thought it was like well known, but I didn't think any of it was surprising. I think that we've seen a lot of the same content in other books, like Pamela DeBar's I'm With the Band. I thought that we saw content like this or heard stories like these throughout the years, not just in music, but also in film, in politics, and so forth. I thought that these are ideas that weren't new and concepts that weren't new. So I wasn't ready for the amount of shock and awe that Confessions received. And I certainly wasn't ready for death threats. I wasn't ready for or prepared for the disdain, for the shaming, for the hate, for the need for police protection during my Confessions tour in 2005, to be traveling around the country with uniformed and plainclothes officers just to go to a Barnes and Noble. And I wasn't prepared for the way women protected men more than they protected women. But I learned very quickly that we did then and still do live in a society that celebrates men who lie and punishes women who tell the truth. My hope for the 20th anniversary of Confessions is that because times have changed and because of social media mostly, because if you think about it, Confessions came out in 2005, we had MySpace, Facebook was brand new, and Twitter didn't come around till I think 2006, and it didn't even blow up till probably 2009 or something. So because of social media, I feel like especially now, the conversations we're having now since the advent of things like, especially TikTok, the way that we're having conversations around mental health, around physical and emotional well-being, around sexual coercion, around sex trafficking, around women's bodies and women's right to do whatever they want and just live their lives the same way men do. I hope and I think and I feel that there is in 2025 for our 20th anniversary, there is a hope that the book will be received the way it was intended to be received 20 years ago. The 20th anniversary edition of Confessions comes with all new chapters. And it also comes with a fully edited version of the original chapters. The new chapters I'm really proud of. And I hope that when you read those chapters, when audiences, when readers read the chapters that I wrote, that they're also proud of those chapters. And I kind of hope that they're proud of me, because there's been, again, a lot has changed in 20 years. And on my end, there's been a lot of growth and understanding and education. And I hope that that shines in the chapters when you read them. Confessions has a new audience now that it didn't have before. Young women who are just discovering the book for the first time. I'm really happy with where I see younger women standing on like social or interpersonal issues, like male-female interpersonal relationships and things like this. I'm really excited to be on social and see the conversations that are happening with younger women. It makes me so happy because they're having conversations that I wasn't able to have when I was younger, that nobody had with me. So to them, I would say, wow, if you're reading Confessions for the first time or even revisiting it, I hope that you look at it now through modern lenses. With everything that we know, with everything that we see in the news cycle, with all of the realizations that we have now that maybe not maybe, but definitely the world didn't have before. I want younger women to go into Confessions with their eyes open and with the new definitions and words that the public has become aware of. I want them to see themselves in the chapters. And even if it's something that you haven't gone through personally or you can't relate to personally, I want younger women to think about the other women who have gone through certain things, who have had to survive in ways that maybe they haven't, right? And to give those women grace and to give them your ear and your understanding and just give them space to tell their stories too. Because every woman's story matters. And I want to see more women telling those stories and sharing stories with each other. And more women writing their own books about their own lives. And so I hope that Confessions inspires younger women to, no matter your story, like it doesn't have to be as harrowing and unforgiving as mine. I want to see younger women tell their stories. I just hope that this new generation of women, with all the technology and all the apps and all the socials and all the things that we're doing, that we also take time to really record our lives and pass our stories down. Because if we don't, how will people ever know that we existed? It's been incredible to me since the onset of the Me Too movement, the amount of support and understanding that has gradually started kind of seeping in. So confusing to me because when I was going through the onslaught of disrespect for simply just telling a story that everyone sees now is factual, actual, and not shameful at all. My original audience being mostly women, those who supported me were quiet, and those who didn't support me were very loud. And what's been really difficult for me is to see so many people saying, I always believed you. I always supported you. I've always. And honestly, I feel like a lot of that has been disingenuous. I think that a lot of people are ashamed to say that they didn't believe me, that they thought that I was crazy. And so my original audience really disappointed me. The readers and the people who made this book a success, it's very like duplicitous. It's such a juxtaposition because you all made this book a worldwide success. And not just in 2005, but every year since. So on one hand, I'm so grateful that you even bought this book and talked about it and have made it so that it has lived on for 20 years. But also I am so disappointed in the women especially who upheld the men and degraded not just me, but other women along the way. So to that original audience, to the original readers, to the women especially, I hope that you pick this book back up, that you read the new chapters. I hope you love them. And I hope you reread the original chapters and that you too read them with a different lens, with all that you know now, with the education that you have now, with the vocabulary that you have now, with everything that we know now. Well, everything that you know now, because I've always known. But I hope that you now look at it and you see it differently, and you treat it differently, and you talk about it differently, and that it opens up conversations about your own stories or the stories of women that you know, and that you tell somebody as quickly as possible, as much as possible, what you know, what you've been through, what you've learned, and that you pass it on like I did. People often say that I was before my time. And I find that it's a way for them to excuse the fact that they did not recognize or want to see and recognize an issue that had been there the whole time. I wasn't before my time. I was right on time. A lot of you were just late. You were late to seeing, recognizing, and admitting that there is a problem. So how could I have been before my time when I'm telling a story that's as old as time? I find that people say that because it makes them feel better about not doing something about the problem sooner. It makes them feel better about judging me 20 years ago instead of listening to what was actually happening, really reading that book with the mindset that many of us have now, post Me Too. At this age and stage of my life, if I had a chance to go back and talk to the younger version of myself, I would tell her to keep going. I would tell her to do just what she did. I would tell her to make all the mistakes, make all the fumbles, because there is a plan for her life. And it might take a while, but in about 20 years, after you publish your first book, your first New York Times bestseller, one of 3, and it sells millions of copies, 20 years after all of that, everything is going to start to make sense. I would tell her what I know now is that everything is part of God's plan, and even though we don't understand it and it looks wrong, I truly believe, and I would let her know that it will be made right. I wouldn't have her change a thing. I would have her do just what she did. Because at the end of all of that, she's going to end up like this. What's next for me? Well, I'd like to go on to help other women tell their stories. I would like to be able to facilitate the storytelling, the publishing of women's stories around the world. And not just women, but anyone who has survived, who has thrived after so much trauma, after so much turmoil. I'd like to be able to support the stories of people who no one believed in. I'd like to publish and promote the stories of people who were shamed and damned and forgotten and lost, and who still fought, who kept fighting, who never stopped fighting. Like, I would just love to be able to do for other people what Confessions and HarperCollins did for me. So with the publication of the 20th anniversary of Confessions just on the horizon, I'm really excited to elevate the conversation. My life has transformed quite a bit since this book was first published, and I'm looking forward to the conversations also transforming around this body of work. I'm excited to honestly move on. I think that in light of recent events and recent news cycles, that I'm finally free to move on. And with the new chapters in this book and with everything that I've just written, it felt like, and this feels like, the perfect closing chapter to this part of my life. Karrine Steffans wrote and writes a particular kind of work. And Elisabeth has, for years, written another kind of work. I'm excited to see more of Elisabeth. I'm kind of happy and excited to let Karrine go. I think she's done what she was meant to do. And I'm really proud of her and happy to see what comes next for Elisabeth. Oh, actually really good.
You broke character.